All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this breakout session on U-Mobility. My name is Kevin Fang. I am Assistant Professor of Geography and Environment Planning at Sonoma State University up in the North Bay. And I'm happy to join with a great panel here today to talk about U-Mobility issues. And how we're defining U-Mobility, of course, there are many transportation revolutions that we are in the midst of. And so in this session, we're going to focus particularly on shared mobility issues, which can be in the form of shared bikes, as well as, of course, scooters, which have been popping up in cities here in the last couple of years. So we'll talk about both of those today, and we're going to take a look at it from a few different angles here, from a city angle, from a provision of services angle, as well as the case of station area planning as well. So with that, I will pass things off to our first speaker, Ryan Smith. He is a transportation planner with the city of San Jose. He's been there since 2011. And so he has been, in particular, focused on improving some of the bicycle use and bicycle infrastructure in San Jose. He's worked on the expansion of the Bay Wheels program, which was the city's regional bike share program. He's also served as a group planner for San Jose's great Viva Calle San Jose Open Streets events.
Woo! We love Viva Calle.
And he manages the city's Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Most recently, especially here over the past year or so, Ryan has been particularly busy helping develop the city's regulatory framework and ordinance for shared e-scooters and other shared micromobility in San Jose, which has grown so much they've had to add another person on board to handle those as well. And prior to that, he spent a decade managing community service learning programs for middle and high school youth. And so with that, welcome Ryan.
Thanks, Kevin. So there is a lot that could be said and talked about regarding bike share and scooter share, generally speaking, and within San Jose in particular. And to kind of distill that into something useful, I'm going to focus on some of the questions that I get when I speak with other cities in our county, city staff, or people from the public, or advocates, and just kind of give a general overview of what we have in San Jose and how we got it, where we're going with it. I'm mostly going to talk, this is not on the slide. There you go. I'm mostly going to talk about, this is the cover of our micromobility website, the city of San Jose. It's also my shoes. So I'm going to mostly talk about scooters, but I do want to speak a little bit on bike share since we get a lot of questions about that. It is nice, though, to give a little bit of context as to why, at least in the city of San Jose, we are exploring and kind of investing in stuff so much. So we are trying to achieve a number of city goals with what we're doing with bike share, scooter share, and other things related to transportation. We have our city's general plan, and kind of the big goal with our general plan is to cut, not the big goal, but one of our main goals in our general plan is to cut the number of trips being taken by car in half. So now it's like 75% of all trips in the city are taken by car. We try to get that down to 40% by 2040. It's a very ambitious goal, so we need a lot of tools, such as bike share and scooter share to get there. Our bike plan, we're trying to get to similar goals with our bike plan. We're actually in a bike plan update right now, bike plan 2025. We hope to have that done next spring. We just passed Climate Smart San Jose, which tries to achieve some of the goals set forth in the Paris Accord. And one of those goals is to create clean, personalized transportation options for San Jose residents. So everything that I'm talking about kind of fits into that as well. Just a really quick overview of what we have currently with bike share and scooter share. So we just added the new hybrid e-assist bikes. Has anybody seen those around San Jose, around San Francisco? They're pretty cool. They're brand new technology, so I don't have a photograph on this slide. Brand new technology, bike share bikes that don't need a dock, they can go anywhere, they're electric assist, they can be docked in a station or they can be locked up outside of the dock. So we're building out to a system of about 80 stations. We're going to connect to our new BART station that's opening soon, and adding in the hybrid bikes expands the bike share footprint outside of where the docks are physically located. In terms of scooters, we have 3 companies that currently have permits for 4,400 scooters, which sounds like a lot, but San Jose is a very big place, so it kind of depends on how they get used. And just for some context, our bike share program had about 150,000 trips last year, and our scooter program had 1.8 million. A little bit of background on bike share in San Jose, and then I'm going to dive into scooters. So we've had bike share since 2013. It started as a pilot program. It was publicly owned, publicly operated by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. It was based on that Caltrain line, so there are a number of cities on Caltrain that were part of this. Mountain View was included at the time, San Jose, San Francisco. It's very limited in scope, and it never really grew beyond its initial vision. In fact, it never got to its initial vision. I think the only way to really get there, if it's a publicly owned model, is to fully subsidize it the way we do with transit, but it had a much smaller subsidy. So the public part of this was turned into a public-private partnership when a company called Moderator Bike Share, who operates bike share in New York, DC, and other places, purchased the program from the Air District and kind of changed the way they operated. They moved it from the Caltrain line into the major cities in the Bay Area and created a regional system, which is actually really cool. If you are a member of what was Ford Bike, it's now Bay Wheels. If you're a member, you can use your Clipper card, and your membership works in any of the cities, trying to reduce some of the fragmentation that we have had in our transportation system and giving you a seamless experience. And then recently, Lyft bought that system along with many other systems in the country, and they're kind of building it into their platform, so to speak. So they're trying to offer a number of different ways people get around, like car share. They've introduced scooters with their bike share program, so they're now operating our bike share program. And that's just an overview on bike share, and Louie's going to talk a bit more about some of the cool stuff that the bike share program is doing to address, more or less to address some of the equity concerns we've heard about bike share and people being able to access systems. Okay, so scooters in San Jose. This is one of the main things I get asked about in the work that I've been doing over the last year is, what are you guys doing with scooters? You guys have 1 trillion scooters in your city. How are you managing it? How can we take what you've done and use it, like adapt it to what our city's doing or whatever, what our community's facing? So background really quickly, last February 2018, one day a whole bunch of scooters showed up unannounced. And there was the company had been talking to us a little bit. We had some sense that this might happen, but it was really almost like we were blindsided. And at the time, they didn't have a permit, but we also didn't have a permit to give to them, which is interesting, right? So this is like technology coming ahead of regulations, and looking into what we could or couldn't do about this. Basically determined that there was nothing in our municipal code that said one thing or another about this type of business or technology. So the decision that we made was to, rather than react and have some kind of ban or moratorium, to just let them operate and watch what happens as a way to help us determine how to build regulations. So we do have regulations now, we have an ordinance in place, we have a permit program. How did we get there? So we spent about a year, doing all kinds of things, listening to what the public had to say, listening to law enforcement, trying to talk to everybody who had something to say about this. We held a community meeting where 74 people showed up and most people spoke. We had a vendor demonstration so that we can get members of the community who were interested or concerned onto scooters to try them out. We talked a lot with our council offices because they were getting the bulk of complaints, concerns, inquiries, to try to understand what they're hearing from residents and what their interests were and how we dealt with these things. We talked a little with stakeholders, downtown association, businesses, San Jose State University, for example. We really just wanted to hear what people had to say and what they wanted so that we could put together something that works for everyone. We also tried to learn from other cities and national organizations, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with NACTO. There's other organizations that are similar that kind of track best practices and advise cities. We talked to other cities. The interesting thing was this was all new. San Jose was one of the first cities to get scooters. So there wasn't really anyone to talk to that had the answer, right? So that was sort of an interesting thing. What did we learn from all of this? Number one, scooters are incredibly popular. Like I mentioned, we have almost 2 million trips in a year. The vast majority of the people we spoke with along the way, and this includes law enforcement, this includes stakeholders, residents, people who are using the scooters, people who weren't, didn't want an all-out ban. I remember, just as an example, a guy who had been hit by a scooter and fell down and got pretty injured. Speaking with him, he didn't even want a ban, just as an example. Folks really wanted to see reasonable regulations because it felt like there could be value to having these things in our cities. Some of the stuff that we heard was that scooters are potentially a transportation option, either in and of themselves or as a first mile, last mile kind of thing. And folks thought that these could serve like a broader section of the city or potentially the whole city. For example, our bike share program serves about 8 square miles of San Jose, and San Jose is 176 square miles. So scooters could potentially go further. Let's change it a little bit with the dockless hybrid bike share because those can also go further. This is what we were hearing at the time. Parking and sidewalk riding, still major concerns among people. Although we did look at how people were using these in that regard. And interestingly, half of all trips that we observed during a survey, if there was a bike lane present, half of all trips were in the street, which is pretty cool. If there was no bike lane, most trips were on the sidewalk. I think that's
More bike lanes.
not, what's that?
More bike lanes. That's
Yeah. Okay, so before I run out of time here, so we do have an ordinance in place and regulations now. Some of the more obvious things, like more standard things, operators have to have a permit, they need insurance, they got to pay fees to the city so that we can recover staff time costs. We can give citations now for operators violating the permit terms. We did create a brand new position to monitor this, and I am so grateful for that because this has turned out to be a lot of work. I would say the most important part of what we've created in our ordinance is the flexibility to change things as we go, because there's no way that we could have nailed this the first go around, and we don't want to have to go back to our city council a year from now and say, hey, we didn't do this right, we need to pass a new ordinance or change things. So we've given ourselves a lot of flexibility in our permit guidelines, requirements I should say. Things about parking, things about where scooters can go, things about the type of devices that we allow, how large of a program area we have, how many companies, the total number of scooters. Those are things that can be changed at any time at a staff level without having to go back to council, and that's great. Currently, we are not capping the number of operators for the number of scooters because we do want to see how people use these and how they proliferate across the city. And I have one final slide just to say where we're going with this. We are hoping for more service, so we really want to just see scooters and bikes everywhere. We'll probably be looking at designated parking areas. We're hoping to see new technology, as Ian pointed out just now. It's potential to create more bike lanes and more protected bike lanes as we have more and more of these on our streets and there's greater need We do need to anticipate issues. My favorite picture is the impound model at San Jose State, because they've taken a different course than us, and you know, they have different needs and concerns. And with that, I will take questions at the end of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So we're going to hold questions until the end. We'll hopefully have a nice, thorough discussion. And we have plenty of time for that at the end. So next up, I'm going to introduce Mui Sam Lee, who is joining us from the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. So, Mui attended her first Bike to Work Day while at San Jose State, and she's been biking ever since. And since then, she has joined the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition's programs team as their education programs coordinator, where she focuses on education and encouragement programs for low-income communities and help them to further engage communities on bicycling for everyday use. And she's going to talk a little bit about some of particularly those efforts here this morning. So welcome to Mui.
I'm just curious, how many of you have ridden bike share before? Awesome, almost everyone in the room looks like. How many of you have heard of the program Bike Share for All? Sounds good. So I will dive a little bit deeper into our Bike Share for All program and sort of the outreach strategies that we use for San Jose, and also talk about some of the impact of the folks that we met on the ground during the outreach, and also some data and numbers around ridership for Bike Share for All. Just mention that. So before we get into all that though, I do want to share some demographics from 2015 with the previous system, like Ryan had mentioned, the Bay Area Bike Share. A lot of the demographics, you know, Bike Share really across the board is really geared towards wealthy white men. And the demographics in Bay Area really are no different. 64% of the household income is over $100,000. 28% of the household income is over $200,000. And then 80%, there's a higher bachelor's degree or higher. So folks that look like me are generally not in that conversation. So we're really honored and really proud to be able to sort of start that conversation about what does bike share equity look like, who is involved, who's part of that conversation, and how can we get more people on board that again really represent how diverse we are in the Bay Area. San Jose, absolutely one of the most diverse cities, so we want to make sure that bike share really represents everyone. So in partnership, we did work with Transform starting last year, or 2017, and that was really the time for us to connect with Transform, and they were receiving funding through MTC to be able to lead bike share outreach and equity programs. We also worked with our sister coalition at Silicon Valley, or San Francisco Bike Coalition, as well as East Bay, and really it's just the coalition really coming together and saying we need bike share equity. We want to make sure that the bike share riders really represent, again, how diverse we are in the Bay Area. So for the program itself, there's eligibility for folks that are 18 and older. If you are really part of the low-income programs, you would qualify for a $5 membership. Some of those programs include CalFresh. There's also SMTA, the Lifeline passes, PG&E Cares, and then also there's an option for folks to either sign up online or to be able to do a cash payment on site. Membership includes a $5 one-time for the first year annual membership, $5 a month for the second year, 60-minute ride, 200, there's bikes endlessly, so you can just go for the 60-minute rides. If you need another checkout for the bike, you can return it and then also be able to check out another one immediately. You can sign up at a cash payment site. There's one that actually opened up in San Jose at Good Karma last month. So there's now options for folks who don't want to necessarily add their credit card. They can now pay with cash. Obviously, as Ryan mentioned, all is card compatible as well. So during our outreach, we really got to meet a lot of amazing people. San Jose, in particular, different than the other coalitions, that we did a lot of on-the-ground direct outreach. So a lot of our outreach was working with affordable housing communities. We worked particularly with First Community Housing in San Jose. We also worked with San Jose State and their EOP program, which encourages first-generation low-income, underrepresented students, the first-year support for the program. One of the folks that I got to meet during our outreach was Oscar. And he was really interesting because we were already there sort of leading another program called Pedal to Health. And that works with low-income, again, communities, bike safety workshops as well as rides. And Oscar, really didn't know about the bike share option for them, but when we were able to sign him up, he felt like it was helping him manage his diabetes. And he's able to sort of be outside in the community as well, and then also obviously do good for his health. So our outreach, as I mentioned, really focused around two main partnerships, and it's leveraging those strong partnerships in the community. We don't have too many CBOs here that work on mobility issues, so it's really important for us to really tap into those key partnerships. And with San Jose State and First Community Housing, we did tabling events, ambassador trainings, to really finding those leaders within each community to help lead the outreach, as well as bike safety classes, rides. We spoke at different meetings, and as well as health fairs. That resulted in bike share membership increases. So San Jose actually has the highest number of low-income memberships by percentage. And it's really proportionate to how many memberships we have here overall. The San Jose has over 50% discounted memberships. Over 50% of people who are signed up for the program again receive the discount. Berkeley at 21%, Emeryville 16%, and then Oakland and Stack up tied at 15%. These numbers, I will note that they were from last year when the data came out through MTC, so some of that might have shifted from now until then, of course. Okay. Some of the key takeaways in our programming with Bike Share for All is that you really have to leverage those community partners and find those really deeply rooted partners who have folks that they're seeing day in, day out. We, again, worked with 7 community housing, affordable housing sites, and really got them signed up and really enrolled into the program. We are looking to hire also bike ambassadors within the community so that they are able to really be the voice and see that they have their neighbors or friends or leaders, part of the bike share movement as well, and that they're riding the bikes. Joining existing programs is really helpful. Having Pedal to Health already there, doing the bike safety workshops and the rides made it easier to really tap on the additional moment of having a $5 low-income membership sign up. Building one-on-one relationships was really critical. A lot of the community members came in really skeptical of us, really showing up one day, but again, it really took time for us to build these relationships and to nurture it like any relationship. So finding us available for bike safety resources, education, classes, and signups made them trust us, and they were more inclined to actually join and participate in the program. Some recommendations though moving forward, we would like to include that the marketing and signage should be really inclusive to the community itself. There's a language that is not native to folks, and the marketing should be in their language. We spoke to a lot of residents that were Spanish speaking or Vietnamese, and so it'd be helpful to have language again in their native tongue. Finding those community outreach ambassadors were really key in really securing those partnerships, having that leader within the community really know the cultural norms of how folks interact, and really having that liaison was helpful for us to get access to some of the deeper relationships we wanted to keep building. Another thing is to really integrate bike share with other modes of transportation. Most members that I spoke to and most residents saw that bike share was not for them. They didn't feel like they were part of that conversation. They didn't feel like they were really included in any of the marketing or the materials. So really wanting to integrate it with other ways of transportation to know that it's an option for them if they wanted to get the last mile in or out of their transportation. I mentioned already really building upon ongoing programs and really allowing folks to have different resources at their disposal and how to learn about different bike safety education and opportunities. Having a dedicated staff also who would really just focus on the bike share equity since the piece is so large. There's a lot to do, but if there's that dedicated staff person to work on it, they can start moving the needle to a more equitable opportunity for folks. So next steps is that we will begin another iteration of Bike Share for All. The program that we worked through in partnership with Transform did end in 2008, but new for this year that we will be partnering with Lyft and Bay Wheels to really be able to hopefully encourage more members. 200 is sort of what we're targeting for this year. In addition to that, after they sign up for the membership, it's not that they're able to get out on the ride safely. So leading with different resources for bike safety classes, knowing the rules of the road, and also maybe being able to advocate for more bike lanes in their neighborhood. A lot of the communities we spoke with had poor infrastructure. The areas really weren't developed for bike lanes, and so how can they be allies for us as well and speak for more bike lanes and infrastructure to support them in their community riding? And in addition to that, it would be the community rides. So we're going to be leading 7 rides, and then also hiring 3 ambassadors within the community. This is particularly exciting for us because, again, a lot of those allies that we developed in our first year were right from the community. So now that we're able to hire them and really build the community outreach and organizing from within. And then just one more slide here. Just from Sean Dillon at Bike Share for All, he manages sort of oversee the whole regional part of Bike Share. He mentioned that this past June, there are 4,296 active members for Bike Share for All, as well as 978 are cash members. So again, using that option to not tie in with their credit card. We had some members that through that way. As well as through credit card option, and then some new members that came in. San Jose is looking at about 855 members, and so there has just been a gradual increase of membership from the first time that the Bike Share program started to now. I believe in March 2008, with Transform's Regional Equity Program, there were 1,683 memberships, and now to see the increase to 4,000 has been incredible. It just shows the work of Ryan in creating more bike, pods in the area for neighbors to be able to access, as well as the different programming that we can offer to make it more equitable for everyone. With that, I really just want to thank you all for being here, for supporting what we're doing with bikes and really doing your work as well in the community and getting more folks out there biking and making it as equitable as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, our third speaker this morning is Dan Province. He is a principal planner with Caltrain. After spending more than 15 years planning, designing, implementing bicycle and pedestrian safety projects in San Francisco, he joined Caltrain last year as their first station access planner. So he's focused on improving first mile, last mile connections, and is leading the effort to bring thousands of bike parking spaces to Caltrain stations up and down the South Bay and the Peninsula. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Dan.
All right, good morning, everybody. First, I just would like to start with a show of hands. How many people took Caltrain as part of their trip to get here today? Okay, very nice. And how many people here have taken a bike and Caltrain as part of the same trip? Okay, that's great. So I'm here today just to talk a little bit about the efforts that Caltrain is making at stations to improve the options for our customers with bikes. A lot is happening in Caltrain right now, and so I'm going to give a quick overview of some of the big picture for the future. Caltrain historically has done a lot to get people to use a bike in Caltrain as part of the trip, but a lot of time that's kind of been a reactionary kind of thing, and we're starting to be more proactive about what we do there. So I'm going to talk about the big picture. I'll talk about station specific efforts that we're doing, and then I'll talk a little bit about shared micro-mobility devices and what we're doing there. I thought that this was pretty interesting. A few weeks ago, somebody at our office left out some old aerial pictures. So on the left is a picture of the 4th and King station in the 80s, and on the right is the similar area today. So as you can see, a freeway has been knocked down, a ballpark's been built, there's towers in places of surface parking lots, there's light rail, there's all kinds of things that have happened there in not that long of a time. And this is, one station, but a lot's happening at a lot of other stations. Millbrae has BART now. Let's see, in Hillsdale, there used to be a horse race track, and it's like practically a whole new city there. Atherton, I guess Atherton's like the same. But for the most part, a lot of these places are seeing a lot of change, and there's a lot more planned, and we're just trying to keep up with that and plan for the future along with all of this. So, people used to avoid being near the rail. It's kind of like, if you look at the ways these cities were designed, that's kind of like, you stay away from there. But now the rail's the place to be. It's a lot of people enjoy the freedom of not driving a car and just being able to sit on the train. So a lot of development is being focused around the tracks now, and we want to be involved with. We're doing a lot of things to grow with that and change with what the cities are doing. So we know that in 2022, Caltrain will start electric service, but what else can we be doing to build for the future, think about the next 20 years? So right now, Caltrain is doing a business plan where we're looking at much more service during the peaks and midday, weekends. We're looking at the infrastructure that's needed with this. How many more trains will we need? What kind of maintenance facilities will we need? We're looking at the cost analysis with all of this. We're looking at ridership projections. We've got 65,000 riders a day today. We're looking at tripling that in the next 20 years. So I won't go a lot into that, but I encourage you to check out the website, caltrain2040.org. There's a lot of really interesting things going on there. And so when we think about all that growth, bikes need to be a big part of that. I haven't heard anybody around the office talking about tripling the number of car parking spaces. So it's like, how are we going to get all those people to the stations? And so, we need a larger vision for what we're doing. We need to plan for growth over time. We can't just make changes for today. We have to think about the big future and think about how we're going to change our stations to accommodate bikes over time. And then, there's bike share in San Francisco and San Jose, but there has been bike share in several other cities that Caltrain serves that is no longer there. And so, we're thinking about that kind of thing too, with regards to what Caltrain can do in that area. So, we are going to be working on a 3-part effort coming up here. We're going to be first developing kind of our first policy that our board will adopt to think about how bikes actually fit in with Caltrain. We'll think about things like, what mode share are we designing for bikes and getting people to the station by bike? We're going to look at station-specific improvements, pick some target years, and figure out just how much space will we need, so that we can get the real estate reserved, so that bikes are part of the big picture from the start. And then there's larger efforts going on. There's TODs, there's grade separations. So if we do a TOD, can we get a bike room as part of that? If we do a grade separation where we raise the tracks up and separate an intersection, can we put a bike room under the tracks? So that
What's a TOD?
A TOD is a transit-oriented development. Thank you.
Huh.
Yeah,
I would have never guessed that.
Okay, no more acronyms, I promise. And then, just with the shared micromobility, the bikes, the scooters, can there be a corridor vision for this? And we're interested in having some kind of consistency throughout the corridor. So, yeah, I guess on the policy, we just want to set an ambitious but attainable kind of goal for a bike mode split. And we want to just have our board approve something that we can point to every time a project comes up, so that bikes have a seat at the table from the start when we're talking about a big project. While this effort is going on, we're going to be doing several smaller efforts. And before electric service starts, Caltrain is committed to spending $3.5 million at our stations on bicycle-related improvements. And then we're planning for more improvements as demand increases over time. So I'll just go over some of this quick station things that we've done in the short time I've been at Caltrain, plus some of the concepts we're looking at here. So recently installed, we had some e-lockers in Santa Clara and in San Francisco. So these aren't great. We've got about 900 key lockers that we rent out to people on a long-term basis, but these are a much more efficient use of space. So we've rolled out some of these. We have a few station buildings where we've got bike parking today, but those are not very well managed. They're not an efficient use of space, so we're looking at new technology to access the rooms and to use the space in more efficient ways, so that we can increase the number of people that can park a bike in the facilities that we have today. We've got bikes and scooter shares showing up at some of our stations, but we don't give people a great way to organize them. So a lot of times they can be scattered, they can be tipped over, blocking pathways, blocking platforms. So we're looking at ways to put in corrals and different things to provide some order at our stations and welcome people. We want people riding there on those modes. We have some stations that are already grade separated. We're looking at, can we put a bike room under the tracks in some places? We don't want to have bike parking in the back corner of a parking lot. We want it to be as close to the platform as possible, and these are great spots. So looking at that and kind of, and also the weather protection is great in these kind of things, so that your bike's out of the sun, out of the rain when we do have it. Like I said about the e-lockers, we're looking to upgrade the technology so that it's a more efficient use of space. And then we've got a few new stations coming along. South San Francisco and Hillsdale and San Mateo are getting brand new stations. So I'm working to incorporate bike parking into those stations, so that is a big piece, so that people have plenty of well-located, easy-to-use bike parking at those spots. So those are some of the kind of station-specific things that we're rolling out, as we speak. Another big component that Caltrain's looking at is the shared micromobility. I think in cities of South San Francisco, Burlingame, San Mateo, Redwood City, Palo Alto, Mountain View, Sunnyvale, all those places have had bike share, and now that it's gone. So we want to see what we can do to kind of be a leader and learn from some of those unsuccessful efforts and help to collaborate with some of the cities along the way as we think about, the next round of bike share and scooter share, whatever that may be. We know that Caltrain is a big destination for people on those types of devices. So what can we do to play a supportive role? We have electric charging for the e-bikes and that kind of thing at our stations. And then I know rebalancing is a big deal. Maybe some storage at the station, identifying places so that there's enough vehicles there so that people can feel like they can rely on it. And then we want to see what we can do to have a consistent user experience so that if you're getting a bike in San Mateo and something else in Mountain View, you know where to look for it, you know what the rules are, you know what the system is. So we will be looking to work with cities to kind of not tell them what to do, but like kind of help get people on the same page as we work through the policies. So overall, Caltrain, we're looking to serve a large number of people coming to the station by bike. And we want to provide options for the many different users out there so that you can use bike share, you can use, lock up a bike at a rack, a meter bike, or have 2 bikes, or, store your nice road bike in a real secure spot. So all these types of options, we want to serve our customers much better than we have in the past. We're trying to invest time, invest staff resources, and try to get a good picture together for folks so that it really will work as we grow more.
Thank you, Dan. And so with that, so we're going to open it up here for discussion. Oh,
Questions?
we got questions. Oh, yes. All right, we'll do the question card system. All right. So
You pass this to you, and then.
Actually, in the room this big, we were planning on just letting people raise hands. If that's
Okay.
gonna work.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
I
So
wrote them down, but whatever.
okay. So we'll do. Okay. And since this big room, I think I'll go around with a mic. So, is anybody with a like to start us off?
Sure. My first question was around scooter parking, and what solutions are we talking about here? Is it geofencing, scooter corrals? Is there something else I'm missing?
That's a really good question that we're still figuring out. So, we didn't want to go into this with an idea of what already works that hasn't even been tested. So we're going to try a few different things. Not sure if it's going to be geofencing or if it's going to be corrals. It's going to be rolled out probably over the next few months. So I don't really have a good answer for you. But that's my answer.
Okay, I'll take it.
I can say a brief little bit. This in San Francisco. San Francisco requires scooters to be locked to something. So like at Fort King, we'll be putting in some bike racks at the station so that people can have a place to lock them up.
So traditional bike rack's not something customized for scooters. It's this tall.
Well, they worked for the design that is in San Francisco, but yeah, we're going to kind of work with all the cities, and we're working with San Jose on the corral idea too.
I want to add to that, because San Jose's land use patterns are so different across the city, we didn't want to start with a single policy on scooter parking. We want to see how people use them and how people react to how they're parked before we decide if a certain area needs to have a certain policy. So that is something we'll be testing.
I have a question about safety of bike share and scooters. And obviously, it's always recommended to wear a helmet. I travel a lot, I use bike share systems in different cities and countries. It's always difficult carrying a bike helmet around. It's also, there are some foldable bike helmets around, and they're still pretty bulky. Does anyone have any brilliant ideas how to solve this?
Some companies have thought about having a helmet rental system, and then people are like, I'm not going to wear a rented helmet that's gross, or the helmet's going to be, in good working order. State law doesn't require helmets, so we can't require helmets for businesses to operate. I don't know of a good solution that anyone's come up with.
I have a follow-up question. I was wondering, what do you guys do, or what do the vendors do when their scooters or bikes on their private property, whether residential or businesses?
That's a great question. So, in our permit guidelines, companies have 2 hours to respond to requests. So, if you're a property owner or business owner and you call the company, they have to come and fix it within 2 hours, or the city can issue the citation to the company. So that's the solution that we've come up with, and we're going to see how that works and adapt it if necessary. And from my experience, I feel like the companies have done a pretty good job at responding. It becomes challenging if it's hard to find the scooter, like if it's private property where you have 200 feet of parking lot and then there's the building and the scooters, who knows where. So that's what we're doing so far.
Thank you for this interesting panel, very up to date. I wonder if, taking the point that Dan made about our previous mistakes and previous bike sharing programs that we had that failed, I wonder if that was a question of financial sustainability for those companies. So it makes me think, Ryan, are you requesting for the companies who want to operate in San Jose a business plan or a financial sustainability plan to ensure that they're just not there for 2 years and then go? We saw the case of Awful, I think in San Jose, who was there for like a few months and then left. Because I think from the point of view of bike sharing for all, we want to make sure that people not use these options, and if they create dependency, that they're not left hanging out there if the bicycles or scooters are kind of taken back. So I wonder if that's something you're thinking of. And just to add into that financial sustainability, the case of, for example, Uber and Lyft, where they actually start ramping up prices. And is that something that you can avoid, so that, or I don't know, what guidance can we give to these companies to ensure that it's always equitable and the fare is kind of equitable for what people can pay?
That's an interesting question too. Our bike share program, it's a public-private partnership, so it's basically a program of the city, and there's a lot of mechanisms in place from like a contract standpoint with Lyft to provide reliable service. So I think that that's a little bit easier to handle as long as they don't go out of business or whatever. The pricing is written into the contract, so they can't take the annual price and blow it way up. It's fixed in the contract, which is great. The scooter companies operate through a permit program, and it's assuming that competition among many companies will keep the prices down. So we don't require a business plan. We haven't written pricing into any of the rules. The only pricing we've written into the permit guidelines is a membership, a low-income discount membership program that matches the bike share for all low-income discount membership program. So no, for the scooters, it's kind of like more of a free market approach, really.
Before we get to the next question, I'd sort of teeing on the previous question, actually, for Rudy and Dan. So while we're sort of on the topic here of financing, where do you see, or sort of your needs, and where do you think you might get sort of funding available to help meet the goals that you two have been talking, whether it's expanding the equity programs or the stationary planning or stationary improvements?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the opportunity to work with cities and companies to build in the bike equity piece into their contracts before the city goes into the contract with them. And it's, scooter share has really changed the market as well. And so there's actually a discounted program for scooter share, different than bike share, but again, it meets the same lens of, qualifying for one of the low-income programs. So it's generally really working deeply with these companies to make sure that they write that into the contract before any city signs them to offer their bike share or scooters.
And then on our end at Caltrain, we've got some money to that we can put into infrastructure at the stations. But yeah, right now we're just asking questions about how we can best spend that money so that what we put in at the stations, can lead to a more successful system. Because I mean, if it fails, it's not working for anybody. So that's really what we're trying to set up right now.
All right, great. And then before I get to the next question here, I will snake around the room. So I'll get to the other side here shortly.
So I was curious about getting the scooter companies who have the permits to about compliance. They don't seem to be governing or making sure that their subscribers are complying with the practices. For example, I subscribe to Line Bike, so when I subscribed, I had to attest that I was over 18, that I would park the bike properly, park the scooter properly, and I've got to take photos. But in my neighborhood, I just see herds of middle school students on these things, and I find them parked improperly a lot on curb cuts and the way so that there's no wheelchair access. So, is the city of San Jose doing anything to make sure that, can they penalize these guys? Or it seems like, I know our police have many important things to do, and just may not have time to look at this sort of thing. Or is it just, you don't care if they get a permit and, that's the end of it? So they aren't ensuring that their people are compliant, their subscribers are complying. And I'm wondering if our city has a way to deal with that.
Yeah, getting the users. Okay, so our permit guidelines really apply to companies and what they're doing with their operations. And then as far as how users are using scooters, that falls more under what state law requires for someone riding a scooter, regardless of who actually owns the scooter, right? So if you're riding a shared scooter or you're riding your own scooter, you're supposed to follow the same laws from the state. And that's something that's only enforceable really by our police department. So sidewalk use, underage use. And then where companies deploy or how their scooters are standing versus falling or whatever, that's stuff that our department can enforce like at a staff level through citations to companies if things are blocking ADA access or whatever. But using our permit system to make the companies comply with state law requirements is challenging. So we're working with the companies. For example, if you get a permit to operate scooters in San Jose, you have to do a bunch of different safety education stuff, and we're working with the companies on implementing that and then on seeing how effective it actually is. So there's going to be some learning, I think, on our part on how to make that work, but we can't write the companies a ticket if one of their users is riding improperly. We looked into it a lot.
You wanted to.
Nobody likes that answer, but that's the answer.
Hey Ryan, you mentioned on one of your slides you want to part of the policy regulation is data for management. What would you guys like to do with that data as a city?
We want to use it for compliance with permit requirements. So we can get really, really geeky and technical here. So there's a new data specification for mobility devices called MDS, the Mobility Data Specification, and it's something that companies feed back to the city so that we can monitor what they're doing. And there's a lot of questions about privacy around that, like what happens when all this data comes in and it has, personally identifiable stuff in it or information about where people are starting and ending their trips. And so there's a nonprofit organization called Open Streets, and one of the things that they're working on lately is how to clean up this type of data before it even gets to the city. So the company provides the data, it goes through this tool that this nonprofit's creating, and then it comes to us in a way that we can't take it apart and use it for other purposes. So long answer short, we just want to make sure that companies are complying in a way that we can manage and monitor.
Great, thanks.
Hi, this question is for Dan. I'm Danielle at LinkedIn, and you were talking about station access design, and I've always been curious if Caltrain is willing to partner with businesses that are located near Caltrain stations to kind of work through some of those designs. For example, I take the Sunny Overbike train every day to work, and you know, there's so many simple things that I would love to do that I know LinkedIn would love to kind of help with, probably like shade, a place to, you know, rest your bike because you don't have a kickstand. Another, oh my gosh, place where you tag on and tag off. There's only one. If you have a bike, it's so hard to navigate to that one spot. So is there a way that we can partner with you guys? We want to. We want our employees to be riding the train, but it's hard when like the amenities, they're spoiled. I'll be completely frank, like they're very spoiled at work, and I want to, you know, try and share that benefit with the public.
Yeah, good question. We're definitely interested in those types of partnerships. We're bringing a consultant on board. We're just in the process of doing that to talk with vendors, cities, companies, just about what we can do to make the whole experience just more seamless, user-friendly. So, yeah, I can give you my contact info and we can talk more about those kind of details. But it's definitely something that we're going to be more focused on.
Hi, my question could be a bit related to previous one. I would like to know also from you then, and what is the statistics of bikes being disappearing, like stolen from lockers in Caltrain station, especially overnight maybe, and more importantly, what is done to improve the security of stored bikes?
So I don't know all the statistics offhand. I know before I started, there were serious problems at the Fort and King station with the lockers. They were in a spot that did not have many eyes on them overnight, and there were definitely theft issues. And the solution was to pull out the bike parking. So there's no lockers there at Fort and King right now. They do have a nice bike room, and that has been the target of thieves as well, with serious tools. Like, they're not just, it wasn't just like, oh, we had a big window and somebody came and broke the window. Like, they're cutting metal, and you know, it's an issue that we have at some of our stations. Other stations, people can lock their bike up to a bike rack, and it'll be there for, you know, days, and it's fine. So, you know, we're going to be coming up with station by station solutions. There's definitely some stations we're going to have to beef things up more than others, but I haven't heard any problems with the e-lockers and bikes being stolen out of those. It's not, you know, it's metal. If you have the right tools, you can cut through it. But I think you know, when you're thinking about bike theft, you don't need to make your bike unstealable, but just if you provide enough security where it's pretty difficult, then the thief's going to probably go someplace else. So, yes, trying to find that right level of investment and security. You know, we want to have just the site design is important. Do you have a lot of eyes on the place where you're putting the bike parking? Do you have good lighting at night? So like, we're thinking about all these types of things when we design a facility and locate the facility so that it's going to be a secure spot in the future. So, you know, yes, there have been some issues in the past, but I think we've learned a lot, and we will continue to try to learn from things and put in high security bike parking in places with lots of eyes on it.
Taking off that question, so with a lot of the e-mobility apps, particularly scooters, something that's attracting to these headlines is vandalism. I was talking with a colleague of mine who now works in Oakland, and talking about the scooters in Lake Merritt, for example. Any issues you've seen out of that in San José or along the Caltrain stations with scooters?
Yeah, we've had several dozen scooters ended up in the Guadalupe River, and so we worked with the companies to retrieve them. And I don't know off the top of my head like where we're at with that. But DOT and our environmental services department are working together on some kind of policy to try to come up with a solution around that. We haven't had the same problems as Oakland, but we've had, you know, similar problems to a lesser extent.
This is a question for Ryan. So you had mentioned that the micromobility providers were paying fees for their permits. The revenue from those fees, are those in San Jose being put towards mostly administration costs, or subsidizing equity programs, or perhaps infrastructure investments into protected bike lanes, things like that?
Most cities that have fees for scooters or bike share permits are using them for infrastructure improvements and for programming, like education programs. San Jose is only using them for administrative purposes, so it's all cost recovery to fund the position that's managing all of this. In the future, we might change that and try to get some revenue for bike lanes, for example, but we are currently only charging for staff time.
Hi, Ryan. Now that there's a lot of new types of devices like electric skateboards or scooters that are using roads and bikeways, and some of these devices have smaller wheels, so they're a little more sensitive to things like sewer grates or just cracks in the pavement. How do cities think about making sure that existing bike lanes are safe for these types of devices?
I think you stumped me with this one. I mean, we have a hard time paving our roads anyways because we have so many roads and it's expensive, right? So I think our focus is on repaving our streets and redesigning and striping on our streets to try to accommodate as many different users and types of devices as possible. But for example, we are currently implementing I think it's about 10 miles of protected bike lanes in downtown San Jose. And that's trying to address the needs of people who want to use the street in that way. So I don't know, can you clarify your question a little bit? Are you talking specifically about like potholes or?
Potholes, or also even rail crossings. I have a colleague who rides an electric skateboard to work, and he's almost fallen a couple times trying to cross a light rail track, for example.
Yeah, so we're trying to repave. I think we're doing something like 80 or 90 miles this summer of paving projects across the city, not specific to any type of vehicle. As we do the projects, we are changing striping to add bike lanes, to narrow travel lanes for cars for numerous safety reasons. For railroad crossings, those are a big challenge, and those are governed by the California Public Utilities Commission, so it gets really complicated. We try to make changes to those. So we haven't found a good solution to that for bikes or anything else.
Thanks.
Hi. I had a statement actually for Woody. You mentioned having bike share, connecting that to transit, and I wanted to point out that right now BPA is developing an ad campaign for their next network, which they hope to bring out later this year. And I saw some of those ads, and it would be really terrific if they showed better connection for the last mile to either bike share or bike or scooter share. So I encourage you any of you to talk to BPA about that ad campaign.
I talked to them 2 days ago about that.
Good, exactly. All right. But then I had a question. What kinds of locations are the best for bike and scooter share? And long term, what do you think it's going to look like? Is bike share going to be supplanted by scooter share? Are people going to switch to more private, to their own personal vehicles instead of depending on a scooter share? What do you see?
I think bike share and scooter share serve different needs and different people and different uses. So a couple of years from now, I don't know what percentage of trips will be used by each, but I think they both have a very important role in terms of where they should go. I think the future is more of a free-floating system or a hybrid system where you have docks in certain denser areas, and then you have just dockless bikes that can go into more suburban areas or lower density areas. And the best places are where people want to use them. So in a dense area like downtown San Jose, you can try to put them at transit or at major destinations, but really you want them to be close to each other so people can walk to them as needed. So if you're having them like 1,000 feet apart, roughly, in visible places where people feel safe, that's the best place. If you're moving out into lower density areas, I think the best way to go is to use a free-floating dockable system. And if you need to create stations or corrals to just observe how people are using them.
Well, actually, before we move on to the next question, actually, very good question there. I've asked that question a lot too about does that we have scooter shares that they share, or we get to see private devices as well. I think we're thinking about devices other than bikes the same way that just because there is bike share doesn't make the private bike obsolete, or vice versa. I think same thing with scooter share. It might even encourage people to get their own private devices. I think the more people using alternative devices, kind of the better kind of situation.
Sorry, this is going to be convoluted. Millbrae, I serve on our bike share or micro-mobility share. We met with Line Bike and we were going to sign the contract the next day, and that's when they dropped the bicycles. For those of you who aren't familiar with farther up the peninsula, a lot of our cities are very hilly. Millbrae is almost all hills. We have one flat stream. And I am perfectly happy to recommend a program that matches with every other city. But when you're a small city with a small staff, a little bump in the road sets you back not just a couple of weeks, but months or years, because you have to start all over. So what I'd love to hear from all of the bike advocates here is a quick checklist of, hey, don't break, do this. Back to your question about bike scooters, Wine, of course, is pushing us hard on scooters. We're very hilly. We have people driving through us from everywhere, including Uber and Lyft drivers that drive like crazy people. Sorry, but that's how they drive. And we're scared of how to keep our people safe, especially in a hilly area. So what, for all the bike or all the mobility sharing programs, what works in a very hilly area? And what should we be doing? We're currently working on our active transportation plan, so all of you activists, this is the time to tell us what we should be doing. You can always contact me. And Caltrain, I'm meeting with one of your board members because we have some things to talk about. But thank you for coming up with ideas like shaded. We have an overpass. We have some things, and I think there's some ways that we can work. It's just sometimes really hard to find the time to do that. So basically, my question: hills. We have kids that are already riding scooters. We had a bike rodeo. A fifth of the kids came on their scooters. So what I also like is, what are the best helmets for kids on scooters? I don't want to have them to go to EDR.
I can start with that. I think one of the things that we're thinking about with bike share or shared micro-mobility effort that we're trying to lead, and we haven't started yet. We're just kind of bringing a consultant on board at this point. But for cities like Millbrae that don't have as much staff time to devote to something like that, if we can just pull some of the resources of some of the other cities and kind of put together some best practices, put together some recommendations that can, one, like show success in a different city, to prove to the council that these are the kinds of things that work, and to kind of allow for partnership opportunities. If there's a contract to be signed with some of these companies, if you buy in bulk, a lot of the time you can get more. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at doing. I think generally the direction is to have more e-assist vehicles. So in a hilly city, it opens it up to a lot more people to ride these types of devices. And I think a mix of dockless and docked, where at the dock you also are charging the vehicle. I think that's a good kind of direction that we can be heading with this kind of thing.
I had a comment about when people are talking to PTA about Next Network Last Mile. They're also responsible for the e-lockers at the Taney and Caltrain station, which are in terrible shape. There's 12 of them and only 2 of them are operable. And it's kind of just red tape at PTA. So when you're talking to PTA, ask them to move that along, because that's not the responsibility of Dan or Caltrain, it turns out.
Thanks for all three of your presentations. That was great. A question for all of you regarding determining the geography of these bike share and scooter share systems. Dan, is that something that your consultant's going to look at across the stations? Louis, how do equity and access play into that? And then Ryan, how do you guys do that in your state?
Okay, so yes, on Caltrain's part, we control what goes on at our stations, but the cities control so much of the area around the stations, and we need to have that partnership, because you have to ride your bike somewhere in that city. So yeah, it's still a lot of things to be determined, but we don't want to step on anybody's toes and tell people how they should run their city, but we want to just have conversations that help build a more successful system. A lot more to come.
And I think, as Ryan mentioned, there are just benefits to having a dock or dock list depending on the high density of the neighborhood. The average that we focused on was simply neighborhoods that were near a station. So of course I'd love to expand it out to East San Jose or parts that don't have bike share access yet. But that's sort of, we're focused really around the downtown core, just because it's access,
There's a lot of limitations with a docked bike share system. We're gonna have almost 100 stations, and when you think about how close together they need to be and you slice it up, it's such a small part of your city. So our city council members are really interested in trying to serve all of the districts, and now that the dockless scooters and bike share technology come along, we're just determining the geography based on where people want to go, and we really don't want to tell companies or users that they can't go anywhere. So we'll see how this works out, and there's operational challenges for the companies if some of their bikes are ending up in like a really, really remote place. But our hope is that people can use them across the city more or less anywhere they need to.
Okay, I've got a question on basically bike policies on Caltrain. In Europe, and I'm thinking in this case specifically Switzerland, they don't let bikes on trains. So what you end up with is a sea of bike parking at train stations. You showed a double-decker bike parking train. That's very common in Europe. So you're dealing with a large volume of bikes. People own two bikes, one or two. Any other commute, one at the end of the commute. But they don't allow bikes on trains. Caltrain allows bikes on trains. And so you're sacrificing seats. And by the way, seats are getting very scarce in the morning and evenings on Caltrain. You're going to stand in the aisles for the whole trips in some cases. So I'm wondering if there's ever been any discussion or consideration of going the European way of banning bikes and then putting sufficient bike parking and all that. So that would be a major change, but have you even thought about that?
There's been a whole lot of discussion about bikes on board. So I think generally, or historically, Caltrain had excess seats on the trains. And so, people would request, hey, I want to take my bike on the train, I'm a customer. So it was pretty easy to take out some seats, put in some bike space on the train. Now that's not so much the case. We have a lot of trains with standing room only. So I think in the future, at our board meeting in June, Caltrain capped the number of bike spaces that will be available on board a train in the future. At this point, there's no discussion of removing bike spaces on board the trains, but really, I think the push is that if we put in a whole bunch of bike parking at the stations, that will make it so that people have options to leave their bike at the station, not take up that space on board the train, which has become so valuable. And there are a lot of people that do need a bike on both ends of the train, and I think Like you said, people could get 2 bikes, but at this point we're not ruling that out and saying, you know, no, we're not serving you. We will have more spaces per hour because our business plan is looking to go from about 5 trains in the peak hour to about 8 trains in the peak hour in each direction. So there will be more trains and so therefore more bike spaces coming. But our focus at this point is to make improvements at the stations. And like I said, we're not looking to ban bikes at this point or do anything like that.
Alright, we are down under 5 minutes. I'm going to go so make some more rapid fire here. So as I go around, if you got a question, make your questions and panelists answers as quick as you can.
In Ryan's presentation, it seemed like you skipped over a slide about scooters on sidewalks, and I would like to hear some comments about that question and maybe relative to scooters and bike paths as well.
Yeah, in our regulations, I skipped over this. We are requiring by the end of 2019 that scooter companies can make their scooters such that they can't operate on sidewalks. So this can be done through a number of different things, sensors on scooters, potentially through GPS. Companies are working on doing this. None of the companies pushed back on this. And we're going to be releasing updates on the progress as we go on our website.
So scooter time came out of nowhere and surprised a lot of public jurisdictions. And there's no way that new mobility isn't going to continue to change in innovative ways. They're going to keep progressing. So what can we do publicly to be prepared and act more proactively rather than retroactively and like, oh, let's see how this kind of finds out and then adopt.
There's probably a longer answer to this. One of the things we've done is that our regulations we wrote apply to a number of other things that could come up. So if someone wanted to do electric skateboard sharing, this permit automatically applies. So we don't have to go back to our city council and say, hey, we have to do this all over again. I don't have a great bigger picture answer for you. There are other folks at the city of San Jose who are actively working with different companies on what could be coming next. There's a lot, I think, going on with like AI and driverless vehicles and other things. But I don't have a better answer, sorry.
Yeah, we're looking to fold that type of thing into the Caltrain bike policy, and our consultant will be looking at potential things that may be coming, and then also allow for flexibility in the policy. So we're thinking about all the answers at this point.
Actually, I'll add that the City of San Jose is currently developing an access and mobility plan that will go to City Council at some point, and I think it's the same thing, like it's going to try to anticipate some of this stuff.
One of the lessons from the Portland scooter study from 2018 is that very few commuters actually use the dockless scooters. And the reason for that is mainly that commuters need 100% predictable, scalable vehicles. So if you have to walk 3 blocks and the battery's dead or the app doesn't work, it's not a great mode. Employers are going to be the major beneficiaries of their employees commuting or their parking and congestion. What can employers do to help build out the safe routes, protected lane networks that are going to allow their employees to feel safe on a commute?
There's a lot there. So I think it would be great if some developers and big companies in our communities can help us build out our protected bikeway networks. For example, if we want to get people to and from their house or the train, they need to feel comfortable on our streets. So it'd be great if we can tap into some of the resources to build out our trail networks, for example. In terms of scooters being more predictable, I think that scooters that want their businesses to survive will have to find ways to be more predictable because people are going to choose what they want. And that's one of the ideas that San Jose has with allowing many different companies to operate, and whoever sort of does the best job will stick around. So a couple of different solutions that can test.
All right, and so with that, we actually are unfortunately out of time here in the session. I want to thank you all in the audience for all of your great questions here, and thank our panel, Ryan Smith, Louis Henley, and Dan